I thought I'd share my method of keeping stuff floating. At some point, you're going to lose stuff overboard. Sometimes I've gone under tree limbs and stuff and had fishing poles snag and tree limb pull them out of the boat. I've knocked stuff off by accident. Twice I've gotten out of the kayak onto rocks and the rock been slippier than I thought, and that spilled everything in the kayak into the water. If you're like me, you end up with a lot of stuff on the kayak. Now I've got, fishing pliers. These are just cheap Rapala ones I've had forever, but some of the nicer aluminum titanium ones get pretty expensive. And one of the things I found is you can buy, this is for a pistol. It's like a pistol cord. You can get them for like 20 bucks off eBay. I picked them up at garage sales. I've got two for both my pliers, and then I've got a de-hooker for circle hooks and stuff. And I just tied string around it really well to hold it. Both these works. They have little snaps on it. I don't trust snaps all that much. I use a D-ring, and I just connect it through there, and then either connect it to the kayak or to my pants. That way I don't lose it. Another thing to think about is eyewear. Some of the sunglasses get pretty expensive. I wear regular glasses, prescription glasses, and if I lose them, I can't see to find them again. Within 3 feet. I'd have to be within 3 feet to see them. I tested that this summer. I got some ground hornets on a lawnmower and lost them, and had to get someone else to help me find them. So I've got these are like $7. This is from Walmart. It's a Chums. It's got foam in it. It's supposed to float like 2.5 ounces, but it's bright orange. That way if I did lose them, I could find them again pretty easy, and it keeps them from sinking. But there's other stuff, like this is my fish checker. It's aluminum. I don't have it mounted. If it falls overboard, it's going straight down. Some stuff won't sink fast, but will sink. This is the tackle box I usually use. If it ends up in the water like this, it'll float. But if it gets off to the side, it'll fill with water and slowly sink. And then you've got other stuff like fishing poles. Don't want to lose a fishing pole. Some of the fishing poles are worth, $400 or $500, if not more, depending on how nice a one you've got. I've got cheap ones, and I've seen some stuff like, I tried this. This is a foam pipe insulation, zip tied to this pole. Now this is an older solid fiberglass deep sea pole sort of thing I use for catfish. This is a Penn Peerless number 9. This is pretty hard wood here on the handle, and I can tell you from experience that foam will not float this pole. Now it will float about like that up at an angle, and you can snag it, or if you're in shallow water, it'll stick out, but it won't keep it up in the water. It'll hit bottom. Some of the newer graphite poles and lightweight fishing reels will probably float. This is another pole I take out quite a bit. It's a Penn 309 level line. Same thing. It's got a hardwood handle. It's a Shakespeare Wonder pole. It's hollow fiberglass, but foam. I don't think any amount of foam would actually float this pole if it were to fall overboard. I mean, it weighs probably at least 2-3 pounds. My solution to that is I've tied the string onto it, and it's tied around the fishing reel at the bottom. And then I've got this is a trout line hook. Depending on where you are, I find these things laying around all over the place, and that's where this one came from. But what I do to keep this stuff floating is I've got just an empty Coke bottle here, And I've tied string around the top up here so it won't come loose. And then I've got a loop on it. And for the pole, you just clip it onto that loop. And these things will float, I'm not sure how much. I don't have anything heavy enough to test it. It's a Coke bottle will float a couple pounds, and I'm pretty sure this sucker will float, I don't know, at least 5 pounds. There's a couple different ways to rig these bottles up, and it all comes down to the way you do the string. You can do a short string with a little loop on it. You know, that's maybe a 2-inch loop. And then if you've got any of these giant snap swivels everybody hates, this is the moment to use them. You just thread that through like you're putting on a fishing weight, and now you can snap it to anything. D-links work really well. Another option, this is a 2-liter bottle, is you make your string longer than the bottle and your loop bigger than the bottle. And then here I've got a D-link, but even if this was a solid loop, like an anchor line or something, you put the loop through it, then you thread the bottle through that loop, and then it's attached. Pretty much everything I've got that doesn't float gets a bottle. And there's my anchor line. It's got a bottle. Especially anchor lines, if you're fishing for something big and you catch it and you need to disconnect from your anchor so it can pull you around, you need a bottle on it so you don't lose your line. Tackle boxes, it'll get a bottle. Like I said, I took 2 spills last year fishing, and both were in more than 6 feet of water and didn't lose anything. Now, cell phones and wallets, this is a real important thing. This isn't a waterproof case, but they sell waterproof cases like otter boxes and stuff, but they do not always float the phone, and they're not always waterproof. That's why I highly suggest one of these little rubber Tupperware containers. This one's an Outdoor Products one. I got this one at a garage sale. But basically, you put your stuff in it, close it up, and this will float the phone. I used this one this year. Previous year, I used this smaller one. This is a Plano. It's got 3 locks, but my new phone doesn't quite fit in it. Now, it didn't have an attachment. This Outdoor Products one has a pre-built-in attachment here. This one didn't. I ended up, there's these hinge parts right here. I drilled a hole through it and added a string to it. And I usually attach that to the kayak somewhere. Usually one of the little handholds. That way it just doesn't disappear. Downside to stuff floating is if it falls off and you don't notice it, it could float away. Upside is it's not at the bottom of the lake, so it's sort of hit or miss. Now, the way that I tie these is I think this is a Mountain Dew bottle. All the bottles I have a lip right here that sticks out, and basically take some string. Doesn't really matter what you use. This is braided nylon. I think this is 60-pound test. This sort of tan colored stuff you see, this is a bunch of old bow fishing line I had. But basically you want to make sure you're at this lip, between this lip and the bottle, and it's sort of like tying a shoe. You want to go under and through once, and then I like doing it again on the other side. And then get it pretty tight. And then I do this thing where you make a loop and you feed it through and then tighten it, and that lets you tighten it down pretty tight. Now I'll do this a couple times. Just go through the loop. You know, make a loop, tighten it. You don't have to do it a whole lot. Some of my bottles have like, you know, an inch of it, but you only need to go a couple times. Then what I do is I'll cut off the excess and leave about a 1/16 inch of it, 1/16 and an 1/8. And then you can either use a lighter, or I've got this little blowtorch that's handy. But you want to just melt the end of that. It'll bubble up and sort of ball back as it melts in, and that'll keep it from untying. Kind of holds it. You can even spush it. It's already cold here, but you can even spush it with a knife or something while it's molting, or the tip of the lighter or whatever. And then it's just a matter of how long you want the string. We're going to make this one so it can go around the bottle. Now what I like to do is tie a square knot before I cut it. And it's not so bad with the braided stuff. You know, just like that. It's not so bad with the braided stuff here. This stuff on my fish checker, it's that twisted nylon twine. I use this stuff for like framework or concrete frames, leveling string, stuff like that. And this stuff's real bad about coming apart. And so you either need to tie it or melt it. Do that, and then you want to cut it on the bottle side of that knot. Oh, that was bad. But see that now, that won't untwine anymore. Now for the other side, I just make a big loop and do, I think it's called a surgeon's knot. Run it through once and you run it through a second time. And then when you decide to connect it to something, like here's a metal loop, you can just feed it through, feed the bottle through the hole. And then it's secured. Not everyone wears a life jacket when they're kayaking. I tend to, almost all the time. And when you do go overboard, it's sort of a oh no moment. You don't think of grabbing stuff, you're just trying to stay on the kayak. And stuff goes everywhere. Like I said, I took 2 spills last year. Granted, both of them I was trying to get out of the kayak onto rocks, which isn't the smartest thing, but that's what I was doing. And you know, it happens. It'll happen at some point. You're gonna knock something over, something will get snagged, fall over, or you're just gonna spill it all. And this is it's a whole lot easier to hunt stuff down that's floating around in the water, assuming you're not in super hard current or anything, rather than, you know, fishing for it at the bottom of the lake. Especially some of the nicer fishing rods, I wouldn't want to lose one. I wouldn't risk it, even with the little foam stuff on them. It's, you know, there's just too much of a financial investment in some of that stuff. But I hope some of that was useful. Another thing, in my previous video on rigging the grapple anchor, one of the commenters mentioned about losing this spreader piece, I guess it's called. About losing this, it will slip off the end of this. The 2 times I've had to break the anchor loose to retrieve it, I haven't lost it, but I could see how it could happen. So I took a piece of coat hanger and threaded it through and then twisted it around, and it's got 2 little ears on it here, and that keeps that piece from coming off. But if you lose that piece, it might not grapple very well. That sort of, it keeps the claws spread, and that's just something else you don't have to worry about. Sort of like tying the string on the little turnbuckle thing back here. That way you don't have to worry about having that come undone and losing your anchor. That's about it for this video. I'm hoping to do a whole lot more fishing, kayak fishing this year. I've got some new equipment coming, new camera equipment that's waterproof. I went out a few times. I really didn't film. I was doing sort of other projects and just sort of fishing. But that's sort of it for this video. Stay tuned. Hopefully there'll be more adventures since it warms up a little bit. And if you have any questions, hit me up and I'll see what I can do to help. Thank you very much.